Hello, everybody, and welcome to Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Today, we are going to take a dive into the human side of cybersecurity. And you may be wondering what we mean by that. The topic in this discussion was inspired by a conversation that we had with a Dell customer at our annual conference, Dell Technologies World, this past May in Las Vegas. This was a multi-billion-dollar customer, multinational, that had been through a significant ransomware attack. And this attack took weeks to mitigate. And during the course of that, their staff was put through immeasurable amounts of pressure and stress. And as they went through this, it was clear that those pressures had an impact on their incident response. And when we asked the customer at the very end if there was one takeaway they would leave the group about how to address an attack of this sort, we were all expecting a technology answer, but what we heard was you have to think about your human resources. You have to think about the people that are working 36 hours without sleep. Not only do you have to think about them on a personal level, but you also have to think about how that fatigue and how that stress is potentially impacting their ability to make good decisions and further the mission of recovering from the attack. I'm Samir Shah, and I'm a part of the portfolio marketing team for cybersecurity here at Dell, and I'll be moderating the conversation. To help us unpack this issue of maximizing cybersecurity resources in an era of a talent shortage, I'm joined by two security experts from Dell. First, we have Jason Roslow, who is a VP of Cybersecurity and Business Unit Security Officer, along with Vijay Krishnamurthy, who is the Director of Global Cybersecurity Services and focuses on our incident recovery response capabilities. Jason, let me start with you. I know you've done a lot of work on the talent shortage and building strong security teams. What advice or what are your initial thoughts on an organization looking at their team and trying to build a strong team that's resilient and can make it through not only the pressures of the day-to-day, but also the difficulties of an event?
Yeah, thank you so much, Samir. It's a great question. There has been talk for years and years now about a cybersecurity skills gap, about unfilled cybersecurity positions. So this is something that's very pertinent to today's security leader. That said, I think that, folks need to open their aperture. That would be one thing I would say. I think having a robust security team doesn't mean finding that unicorn, finding that that single person who can do all things or that jack of all trades. It means being open to other folks, other career journeys, other education journeys that folks have had, where they have applicable skills that can come in. Cybersecurity is such a broad thing today. There are so many aspects where ancillary skill sets and knowledge and abilities that people have brought can come in and really help you build out that robust team. And then reaching out into people groups where they're maybe a little less in touch, where we have not, as an industry, maybe as successfully gone after talent. So I think about, like, here at Dell, we've partnered with not-for-profits, organizations like the National Cybersecurity Alliance, and others, to get into academia, to get out to college visits and college fairs, to reach out to individuals who have maybe not considered a career in cybersecurity, and help them understand that there is a place for them. They can see themselves in cyber. So that's helped us with our cybersecurity skills gap. Again, we're still looking for the best and brightest out there. But we've been able to kind of open that aperture, as I said, and go out and find that talent at the universities, in the areas where they haven't maybe considered a career in cybersecurity, but would certainly benefit from it.
So it sounds like you're looking at casting a much wider net, looking at a bigger group, but the goal is still to bring people in and build and retain them. Can you talk a little bit about professional development and the importance of retention? I guess it would be a pretty difficult problem if you bring somebody up and then they were to leave for another organization after building some experience. So how do you
Yeah.
retain good folks?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. I mean, I think, without even going into it, I think your standard stuff of compensation and benefit, culture at a company, working with a good group of people who you come to work with every single day, who you go into battle with if you have an incident. Sometimes we use terms like that. Who you're there with, the culture of the company is absolutely critical. But because cybersecurity skills are perishable, we are in a, kind of day-to-day battle, if you will, against bad actors, against threat actors. You need to keep those skills relevant. You need to keep those skills modern. We look at and get threat intelligence and see what the latest threats are. And we need our cybersecurity professionals to be focused on what are the defensive tactics, the technologies, the people, the process, the tools to be able to defeat the attacks that we're seeing out there today and the threats that we're seeing out there today. So one key thing I think to retention that sometimes gets missed in some organizations is not having a really structured formal learning and development program. So it's not just hiring someone with a solid resume and the right educational credentials. It's keeping them as continuous learners so that they're always focused on both the latest threats, the latest risks that come up to be, and then the preventative measures and the security controls that we can put in place to keep those risks from happening. So continuous improvement, continuous education, having a strong learning and development focus to me is a key part of retention.
Now, I know you've also mentioned in the past that third-party organizations can sometimes help augment augment organizations' teams. And I know VJ, we're going to get to that in a minute with the services that you help bring to market. But Jason, can you talk about from a overall talent portfolio perspective, what is the role that third parties can play, and are they especially beneficial to smaller organizations, or are they beneficial across the board? Love to hear your thoughts on that.
We started this conversation, Samir, talking about what we had heard from a customer who had a major significant cybersecurity attack and how the load that brought onto their personnel. So because you can't plan for, now I think any cybersecurity expert would tell you this, I know Vijay will say this, it's not if but when. So cybersecurity incidents and the attack landscape that we see out there today, it happens with a fair amount of frequency, but thank God it's not every single day. And so you just don't know. There's too much variable there. So having a partner who does incident response, who does remediation, who does recovery, having that partner on retention is absolutely a best practice. We do it here at Dell. So even with a security organization of over 1,000 security professionals here at Dell, we have partners on retainer. If we don't need to use that retainer for an incident response, we have an opportunity to be able to do some proactive work, whether it's training, tabletop exercising, helping us get stronger if we ever have that day where we have an incident and the bell goes off. But having that trusted partner up front, one, it helps us from a labor perspective, from a workload perspective, keeps our teams from burnout. And then secondly, I would say there's a trust building measure there, right? So when something bad does happen, being able to tell your customers, hey, not only did our experts look at this and respond to this, not only did we do forensics on it, investigate it, but we had a trusted partner who you probably know, who has a trusted brand, who also came in and looked at our work and supported us on this. So it's not only dealing with the variable nature of these sorts of things and being able to have scale and being able to scale out your own workforce, but it's also a trust building measure for customers.
And I think you even said at one point that if you were looking at partnering with a vendor or a supplier, if that supplier did not have a retention agreement for help when it came to a cyber event, you would be hesitant to potentially partner with that vendor. Is that, did I capture that right?
Yeah, I mean, I think for a large enterprise like Dell, and the fact that we have a partner ecosystem for a variety of things in security, what does that show? It shows that one, we know we're not experts in everything, but we will go find the experts and we will bring them over and have them be a part of our team, right? So there's a humility there that I think all security professionals will resonate with. So yes, absolutely. I think that whether it's you're a small to mid-sized organization and you just can't maybe retain the size of a security organization that you'd like to, and so you want to have staff augmentation from that perspective, or even if you are a larger organization and you want to be able to continue to build that customer trust, having a partner around incident response, being on some sort of a retainer is absolutely a best practice.
And I think that's a very good segue to Vijay. I know you spend a lot of time thinking about how customers can make it through very difficult cyber events and helping them do so with the services that you bring to market. What type, let's start kind of at a big picture level. When you're looking at an organization and you're looking at how to best support them through mitigating a cyber attack, what types of issues are you looking to mitigate, and how can that third party service help there?
Samir, when my customers are affected by a cyber event, they need help primarily in two areas, okay? Forensics, which is what the who, what, when, where, how analysis is. How did this happen to me? How did I get compromised? And the second big area where customers need our help is business restoration, getting them back up and running. Every hour that my customer is down, their business is down, they're potentially looking at millions of dollars of lost revenue. I had customers in the past that were, have manufacturing customers, heavy automotive manufacturers. And their entire plants were non-functional. They could not move product at all. And when customers get compromised, any and all workloads across their enterprise architecture could be compromised. I'm talking databases, networking, servers, storage, comms and collab, ERP systems, payroll, messaging, you name it, it could be compromised. That's how threat actors behave. So those are the two primary areas, forensics and business restoration. Now, business restoration is probably a little more important than forensics, but I would say they're almost just as important to a customer. Forensics, because they need to figure out how the whole thing happened to them so that they can ensure that something like this never happens again. And they also need to put out breach communications to the outside world. Why is that important? That way they can tell their customers, their partners, their vendors, we know how it happened. We have taken measures to address it for the future, and we have ensured that something like this will never happen again. So that way they can regain their credibility back, and they can continue to do business with their customer base. So yeah, two broad problem statements: forensics and business restoration.
And have you seen fatigue on teams within your clients have a material impact on their ability to recover? Simple fatigue of working too much.
Very much so, Samir. That's a very important aspect, right? I mean, we at Dell, we work with customers of every size and scope and in every segment possible. And customers go to a lot of lengths to ensure that they're prepared for such an eventuality. The one thing they cannot imitate is the sheer levels of human endurance it's going to take to recover from a cyber event. When your business is down, when you're taking such massive loss of productivity and revenue, your entire C-suite and your board is going to be breathing down your necks, and every last person in IT and in security is going to be fully engaged in getting the business back up and running. Okay. I have had customers that reported business impacts of $100 million to the SEC. I've had customers that reported even bigger losses, much bigger losses to the SEC. When you have such an impact, Samir, and you have your executives breathing down your necks, you're literally pulling a 24/7 operation to get back in business. Last year I had a customer in Spain that worked for 48 hours straight, and the gentleman had to be taken to the ER. And that's what I mean, right? Whenever customers do simulations and tabletop exercises, that's the one thing they just don't mimic, or they don't even think about it. the level of endurance it's going to take. And that's also where, Samir, a partner, a services provider, maybe someone like Dell, maybe other partners that the customers are working with, they can come in and help our customers, in situations such as this where burnout is very much a possibility.
I think I would, Samir,
So,
if I could just riff on
yeah,
that,
please.
if I could just riff on that for just a second. I mean, I think Vijay brought up such a good point, right? I think companies are often thoughtful about maybe a product launch or something else, a new service they're introducing, a marketing campaign, and there's going to be a heavy sprint towards the end to get that thing across the finish line, to get that out to the market, get that out to the customers. And so they're used to thinking like that, but that's very much a kind of continuous trackable project plan focus kind of, here's where we're going to have spikes, here's where we're going to have our sprints. When you are in the middle of a cyber incident and there is a bad actor on the other side of that, there is a human being, a group of human beings who are actively looking to exploit you, who are actively demanding a ransom demand and asking for Bitcoin before they release your data. There's absolutely no planning, right? You have to constantly react. You have to do your forensics work. You have to do your communications planning. You need to work with the outside legal counsel. You have to work with potentially a ransom negotiator. I mean, these are the sorts of things that are completely unplannable. And you need a surge workforce. You need experts in those things to be able to have an effective response.
So if I'm a CISO and I'm looking at resource planning and I'm looking at my hiring plan and the staff that I have, does it make sense for me to try to build the entirety of a team, or does it make sense to keep that overflow valve through a third-party vendor? Is that a more cost-effective way to manage that risk potentially? Because if you get really lucky, maybe it doesn't happen, or maybe it doesn't happen for a couple of years.
Samir, you should have a core set of team members that will jump in and start recovering your mission critical workloads. Now, having done this for over 80 years here at Dell, we have identified some core areas of infrastructure where we need personnel across the board for most of our customers: Active Directory, networking, forensics, storage, backup, and restore. Those are some of the core skills. Now, again, like I said, quantity and capability, those are the two things that customers need all the time. I just addressed capabilities. Quantity, when you're pulling a nonstop 24/7 operation, Samir, especially for our large enterprise and select customers, you can never have enough people on staff. But then again, that's also where business leaders need to strike a balance between having enough firefighters in your firehouse for that one-off situation versus relying on partners. Okay. Again, depending on your business, you could also have some niche skills that you may need in the case of an event. You don't need to have that skill on staff, on standby all the time. Again, that is something that you can easily leverage from your partners. But so the short answer to your question is, yeah, identify the core areas that you do need for immediate triage and containment, but also rely on your partners for scale.
Yeah, I think I go back to the examples I gave before. You think about, I talked about mobile devices, right? We may not have a need to be able to penetration test or exploit or do data recovery off of mobile devices with any sort of regularity. So we have a team of penetration testers. We have a team of e-forensics. We may not have that capability around mobile devices. So that's something that we're going to reach out to a partner for. That's likely not to have the sort of velocity and be a response type situation as a destructive cyber attack, as a ransomware attack, right? And so I think any enterprise, any small, medium-sized business, any organization should have an identified professional or group of professionals that can do incident response. But I would expect that in the playbook, and pretty much everybody works off of an incident response playbook of some kind, they're going to have some sort of a partner on retainer, ready to come in the event that they have an incident.
Great. I think that makes a lot of sense. And one more area that I think we should get into with all of this is AI tools are rapidly revolutionizing security programs and the capabilities of teams. Where do both of you see, and Vijay, I'll start with you, where do you see AI potentially playing a role in this augmentation of skills and sheer volume and as you mentioned, quantity of work that needs to be done, both in the context of the big picture of SecOps as well as incident response?
AI is very much a double-edged sword, Samir, especially when it comes to security. Okay, AI has its challenges: data privacy, data integrity, data leakage. You have to contend with bias and hallucinations, IP infringement, compliance and regulations. There's a million topics that customers have to contend with when it comes to AI. That said, AI has a ton of benefits that we can leverage in the security space. Okay, predictive analysis, advanced threat detection, automation, and efficiency. There is a million resource scaling. Scaling results, the ability to scour through a million alerts and do much more efficiently what a SOC team can do manually. AI can do much better and more efficiently. So there's a million efficiencies, and a lot of these AI-centric efficiencies can be injected into products that we use today very routinely. So AI is very much both a boon and a curse. The problem for us good guys is we are held to laws and regulations. We have our constraints. We have to worry about bias, about hallucinations, ensuring that the AI that we use is letting us work ethically and with integrity. Now, the bad guys, for offensive purposes, AI is simply a means to an end. They are not beholden to any of these constraints. So generally, if you ask me, Samir, I would say that AI, as of now, has a bigger advantage in the offensive space, and us good guys are constantly playing catch up. But that doesn't mean that we should not embrace AI. Absolutely, we should take advantage of every benefit that AI can offer while still trying to keep up with the bad guys. Jason?
And I remember at one point you had said that while AI can be great for security programs, it also creates a lot of data that can become a new threat vector as well, or a new attack surface rather. Jason, what are your thoughts on AI revolutionizing?
Yeah, I mean, I think, one, I think we have to be mindful of the fact that we've seen machine learning. Now, we want to kind of, go AI, although it's at its core, it's machine learning. We've seen machine learning and AI in many of our security tools for a number of years, right? It's really been what has helped the Security Operations Center, the SOC, separate the signal from the noise, right? So there's constant pings on the network. There's constant potential threats against the network. The AI that's baked into the tools is what helps our modern SOCs and our SIMs be able to find that signal and then bring it forward to an analyst who's able to determine. We're seeing more and more automation, so automated blocking of potential attacks, which is great. That's been a really big benefit to the defensive side of things. I agree with Vijay. I think that, on the offensive side, unfortunately, they have a little bit of an advantage because there's no constraints. You're seeing, as an example, phishing emails that are much more tailored, much more difficult. It used to take, an expert to kind of create a spear phishing that was tailored directly to the target they wanted to go after. Now AI can do that so quickly. I want to target someone in this geography, in this time zone, in the financial services, and you can have AI kind of generate that sort of a message. So it certainly is a big benefit on the bad guy side. We've been using it on the defender side, baked into our tools for some time. I think where you'll see some progress, a lot of what we do does require communications, communicating, training, driving awareness campaigns within our own workforce, communicating out to our customers, to the market, et cetera, when we have various security issues happen. I think being able to leverage AI, where typically is a standard use case standard statements, we want to be able to continue to get out there to build trust. I think that'll be a place AI can help us with in the future.
Couple more points that I want to add there, Samir, to what Jason just mentioned. LLMs have come a long way with injecting security in their responses, the approach they take with giving us responses. You can't easily get an LLM to give you malicious code that you can otherwise exploit. But still, with a little bit of massaging and cajoling, you can very easily make a Copilot or a Gemini give you equip you with malicious code that you can then exploit. And you don't necessarily need to be a certified hacker to be able to exploit something like that. It's very easy. With a little bit of prompt engineering, you can do that. And the other thing to remember is natural language processing has come a long way today. You could be a bad actor based out of one of those rogue countries, out of Russia or wherever. You may not be able to speak a word of English, but with natural language processing, you could very quickly speak any local dialect, and you could use social engineering to quickly win over an unsuspecting customer. So there are those capabilities within AI as well that can be exploited. So, us good guys have constantly got to be on the watch. AI has a lot of benefits, but we have to be on the watch too.
Sounds good. Yeah, definitely a lot to unpack with AI, and certainly not a one-sided story. As you mentioned, it's a double-edged sword. So as we conclude this conversation, I'd like to give each of you the opportunity to share kind of one key takeaway that you would leave organizations with as they're thinking about human resource planning around ongoing security operations and incident response. Jason, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so I think in both of those cases, whether it's ongoing security operations or specifically in the extremely high velocity, high stress environment of incident response, I would say in both of those, organizations should be thinking it really on two sides, in two dynamics, right? So there's the skill set piece. There are skill sets that are required in a modern cybersecurity organization that you may not need to have day to day. And so those are skill sets you want to lean to a partner for. So that's the one thing I would say is just a pure skill set perspective. I gave you some examples, talked about the mobile device. So there's areas where there's a skill set that may be needed, but not with a lot of regularity. And so you're going to go to a partner for that. I'd look at it from that dynamic. The other dynamic is the surge workload perspective, right? So when you do have a significant destructive cyber attack, a ransomware attack, whatever it is, you don't want to have your entire team burn out. You don't want to have, as Vijay talked about, someone end up in the emergency room because they've worked for 48 hours straight, right? So you have to have surge capacity. You often can get both. You can find a trusted partner that has a skill set that you may not need to keep on staff all the time and has the ability to scale and surge if you have an urgent security need. But I look at it from those two dynamics. Skill sets I want to go to a partner for, and then surge resources when, unfortunately, the bell goes off on an incident.
From my perspective, Samir, when it comes to security, prevention is definitely better than cure. So as long as you have a layered defense strategy, defense in depth, a good mix of administrative, physical, and logical controls, as long as you combine all of that with a robust end user education, and you have a good staff, a reliable staff that can jump in, is very aware of your incident response plan, and yeah, you have tested it well ahead of time, not just the simple scenarios, mind you, but the more complicated scenarios, because every threat actor event, driven event is going to be a very complicated scenario. So you have to be prepared for that. Having the right people on staff, having the right partners on standby, like Jason mentioned a couple of times, you need to have the right skills, the right quantity of those skills pre-identified. If you're going looking for those skills after the fact, it's going to cost you valuable cycles. So preparation is key.
Got it. I think that makes a lot of sense. Well, I really appreciate the both of you helping us unpack this issue. There's so much here, and the attack surface and the threat landscape is so constantly evolving that it's important we take some time to look at the human resource angle of things. And I encourage all of our viewers to visit dell.com/cybersecurity-month to see the full range of content that we have. We're looking at a variety of different issues this month. And with that, I'd like to wish you all a very happy Cybersecurity Awareness Month.